I went to the school on an investigation. Assignment and grabbed lunch in the cafeteria. While I was at it, I noticed a girl who'd only gotten herself a bowl of the free broth. So I ordered a meal and set it in front of her. Someone nearby whispered, "Isn't that the Ivy League girl? How's that guy have the nerve to talk to her?" Before I could process that, a male teacher was already charging toward me, his open palm cracked across my face. "What class are you in, little punk? You think you can harass my daughter?" The girl panicked, grabbing his arm. "Dad, it's not what you think." He shook her off and seized my wrist. "Move. We're going to the principal." I tried to explain. "You've got it wrong. I'm from the Education Bureau." He let out a derisive snort. "The Education Bureau? A kid your age, and you're already lying through your teeth? Move. I mean, I just have a baby face." He dragged me into the principal's office, still hollering, "Principal Finch, my daughter is a guaranteed Ivy League admit, and this little degenerate had the nerve to harass her. A student like this needs to be expelled." He wheeled on me, his voice sharp as a blade. "What class are you in? Give me your parents' number." "Your dad here?" I smiled. "Go ahead and call. The real question is whether you've got the guts to dial Vincent." Finch choked on that, blinked. Momentarily stunned, Neil Delgado was practically bouncing beside him. "Principal, did you hear his attitude? This shameless little delinquent needs to be taught a lesson he won't forget." I leaned back in the chair and rubbed my wrist where his fingers had left red marks. "Quit wasting time. Make the call." Finch took the bait. He picked up the desk phone. "What's the number?" I rattled off a string of digits. He dialed, hit the speaker button, and puffed himself up. "Hello, this is Vincent Finch, principal of Evergreen Academy. I assume you're the student's parent. Your child has been harassing a female student on campus. I need you here immediately." 2 seconds of silence on the other end. Then a voice came through, laced with obvious confusion. "Excuse me, what did you say?" "Who?" Finch repeated himself louder this time. "Your son has been harassing a female student at this school. You need to come handle this right now." Another silence. I nearly bit through my lip, trying not to laugh. If Principal Finch had any idea who was on the other end of that line, he'd have wet himself on the spot. But he didn't know. He just stood there, chest out, waiting for my parent to come grovel. "Principal Finch," the voice on the phone said, its tone shifting to something strange and cold. "You certain you're talking about my son?" "Of course I'm certain," Finch snapped, losing patience. "Are you coming or not?" The voice replied. "I'm on my way, and Principal Finch, until I get there, no one touches a single hair on his head." The line went dead. Finch stood there, gripping the receiver. He let out a dismissive grunt. "Quite the tough guy." Neil sidled over. "What happened?" "What did they say?" "Said he's coming right away." Finch set the phone down, told me not to touch his son. Neil's eyes darted around, and then a grin split his face. "Principal, I've got an idea. Call an all-school assembly. Make this little punk apologize in front of the entire student body. Kill the chicken to scare the monkeys. Let Every boy with wandering eyes see what happens. Isn't that a bit much? Neil's voice pitched higher, shrill with indignation. My daughter is ranked first in the entire city on the practice exam. She's the crown jewel of this school. If we don't deal with scum like this, what's next? Open season on her. Finch nodded, about to speak when Neil reached over and grabbed a fistful of my hair. I caught his wrist and twisted hard. Ah, he yelped, the color draining from his face. I can walk on my own. I let go and looked at him calmly. Neil clutched his wrist, my steady gaze forcing him back half a step. The obscenity on the tip of his tongue died in his throat. He hadn't expected me to fight back. Definitely hadn't expected me to be that strong. In the corridor, he walked ahead of me, glancing back every few seconds to glare. His mouth, though, never stopped running. Shameless little punk. No manners, no upbringing. I stopped walking, he stopped, too. I me weirdly. Watch your mouth. My voice was quiet. He flinched back half a step, his lips trembling twice before he swallowed whatever he'd been about to say. Principal Finch called from behind us. Let's go. Let's go. The whole field is waiting. The athletic field was packed. Over 2,000 students stood in neat rows. By class, a dark sea of uniforms buzzing. With whispers, Neil shoved me onto the stage. He put real force into it, trying to send me sprawling, but I planted my feet and didn't so much as sway. Flicker of disappointment crossed his face. Vincent strode to the microphone and cleared his throat. Today we are holding an emergency all-school assembly. The field fell silent. This young man, he jabbed a finger in my face, was caught harassing our Ivy League track student Gretchen Delgado. In the cafeteria, the crowd erupted. Students leaned into each other, murmuring. Neil snatched the microphone. Gretchen Delgado is my daughter. First place in the citywide practice exam. The pride of the school, our ticket to the Ivy League. He wheeled on me, his finger nearly touching my nose. There have been punks like him before. They all wanted to ruin my daughter, ruin the school's future. What are they? Nobodies. They're not even worthy of speaking to her. Vincent took the microphone back, softening his tone, putting on a magnanimous act. Apologize in front of everyone. Write a letter of guarantee. If your attitude is satisfactory, I might consider not expelling you. I looked at that sanctimonious face, couldn't help but laugh. You don't even know who I am, and you're demanding an apology. Neil exploded. Who are you? Who could you possibly be? You're nothing but a shameless little thug. His rage boiled over. He charged at me, hands swinging for my face. I sidestepped his palm cut through empty air. His momentum carried him forward, and he staggered 2 steps, nearly pitching headfirst off the stage. Laughter erupted from the crowd below. Neil's face turned crimson. What are you laughing at? He screamed at the students, then spun back toward me, eyes wild with something unhinged. He dug a red marker out of his pocket and twisted off the cap. Think you're tough? Think you can keep dodging. He advanced on me, marker raised like a weapon. I'm going to write thug across your face. Something you'll never wash off. Let the whole school see exactly what you are. The laughter died instantly. Someone sucked in a sharp breath. Voices called out that he'd gone too far. The marker tip was an inch from my cheek when I drove my foot into his midsection and sent him crashing to the ground. Neil let out a strangled scream, his face draining of all color. With my other hand, I pulled my credentials from my pocket and held them in front of his eyes. Read it, he squinted, leaned closer than his eyes flew wide. The badge read plain as day. Colin Simmons, Deputy Director, City Education Bureau. Why his lips shook. Every trace of blood vanished from his face. I let go. His legs gave out. He collapsed to the ground like a puppet with its strings cut. I turned to face the 2,000 students below, raised my credentials high, and let my voice carry across the field. My name is Colin Simmons, Deputy Director of the City Education Bureau. Dead. Silence across the entire assembly. Vincent Finch froze for 3 full seconds. Then he laughed. Do you think we're children? Neil's confidence surged back in an instant. Exactly. That badge is obviously a fake. Vincent sneered, looking Colin up and down. Deputy Director of the City Education Bureau. How old are you even? You're clearly some teenager. Neil leaned in close to inspect the badge, clicking his tongue and shaking his head. The counterfeiting these days is really something. Almost looks real. If I hadn't seen the genuine article before, you might have actually fooled me. Vincent turned to the crowd below the stage. Academic affairs, look up which class this Colin Simmons belongs to. Of the academic affairs office pulled out the student roster, flipped through it, and looked up. Principal, I've checked. There's no one by that name. Neil jabbed a finger at Colin's face, his voice shrill and cutting. I knew it. You're some delinquent who snuck in from outside. He was gaining steam, now his volume climbing with every word. Probably from one of those vocational schools nearby. Snuck into our academy to harass female students. I've seen plenty of lowlife like you. The students in the audience began to stir. Some whispered to each other. Some craned their necks to get a better look. Few furrowed their brows, but Neil didn't care. He was practically vibrating with excitement. Look at him, dressed up all nice, trying to pass himself off as somebody. He's nothing but a thug forged credentials, infiltrated a top-tier school, specifically to harass our best students. He spun toward the crowd and bellowed, campus security. Where the hell is campus security? Get up here and restrain this punk. The head of security jogged up the stage steps with 2 guards in tow. The 3 of them took positions around Colin, but didn't lay a hand on him, probably because they'd watched him kick Neil to the ground moments earlier and weren't eager to test their luck. Neil sidled up to Vincent, his voice deliberately loud, enough for the microphone to catch. Principal, this kind of street trash, forging credentials, sneaking into a school, harassing our Ivy League candidates. We need to call the police. We have to call the police. Send him to juvenile detention. Vincent nodded, his expression a mask of righteous authority, as he pointed at Colin. Who are you? Really? Tell the truth right now, or I'm calling 911. Colin looked at him calmly and spoke each word with measured precision. I already told you, I'm a Deputy Director of the City Education Bureau. Neil let out a derisive snort. Still sticking to that story? You look barely out of high school. How could you possibly be a deputy director? Take A. Look at yourself. Do you look like a grown man in any position of authority? Vincent's sneer deepened as he sized Colin. Up again. What kind of deputy director? Shows up at a school alone? No driver. No staff. No entourage. Who exactly do? You think you're fooling? Neil jumped back and called the police. We have to call the police. This kind of delinquent is a cancer on society. Juvenile. Detention is exactly where he belongs. Vincent pulled out his phone in front of over 2,000 students. He dialed 911. Hello, 911. This is Vincent Finch, principal of Evergreen Academy. We've apprehended an individual on campus who forged Education Bureau credentials and infiltrated the school to harass female students. He severely disrupted our academic operations. Yes, please send officers immediately. He hung up, folded his arms across his chest, and stared at Colin with smug satisfaction. Neil planted his hands on his hips, chin tilted high. Just you wait. When the cops get here, you'll be the one crying. Forging a government official's credentials, that's enough to put you away for a good long while. He turned to the audience, projecting his voice across 2,000 students. Everyone take A. Good look. This is what happens when you harass our top students. Let this be a lesson if anyone else gets any funny ideas. This is your future. Colin stood on that stage, the corner of his mouth curving upward. He didn't say a word. Neil saw the smile, and it enraged him. He stormed forward, getting right in Colin's face. You think this is funny? Let's see if you're still smiling when they drag you into the station. Vincent moved in too, his voice dropping to something low and threatening. Forging government credentials, that's 2 to 3 years minimum, son. Your life is over. I looked at him, dripping with mock terror. Oh no, I'm so scared. But Neil actually thought I was frightened. His voice pitched higher. What's the matter? Scared now? Too late. You were pretty tough a minute ago, weren't you? Finally figured out you're in over your head. I nodded. Sure. Let's wait and see. Police. Sirens wailed in the distance. Neil practically leaped into the air, jabbing a finger toward the school gates. Here. That. The cops are here. You're done. Vincent Finch straightened his tie, squared his shoulders, and prepared to greet the officers. A black sedan and 3 police cruisers rolled through the school gates. Neil pointed at the convoy and screamed at me. See that? 3 cruisers. They're all here for you. I still had my arms crossed, the smile on my face unchanged. The man who stepped out of the black sedan was Jeffrey Chavez, director of the City Education Bureau. His expression was stone. A cold fury radiated off him in waves, and a squad of officers filed out behind him. Neil jabbed his finger at me and shouted at the approaching officers. Officers, that's him. That's the punk. He forged an Education Bureau ID to sneak into our school and harass my daughter. Arrest him. Director Chavez didn't spare him a glance. He walked straight up onto the stage. He stopped in front of me, looked me over head to toe, and only after confirming I was unharmed did he speak. Deputy Director Simmons, are you all right? The second I got that call, I knew something had gone wrong. Dead. Silence. Every sound in the courtyard evaporated. Neil's finger froze in midair. What did you just call him?
The
Microphone, still clutched in Neil's trembling hand, picked up the ragged, uneven sound of his breathing. Screech. A burst of static echoed across the courtyard, loud as a gunshot, making Neil flinch. Director Chavez didn't look at the crowd. He didn't look at Finch. His eyes were locked on Neil's suspended finger, pointing directly at my chest. I called him Deputy Director Simmons, Chavez said, his voice a low, gravelly baritone that needed no microphone to carry its absolute authority. He turned, his head slightly, his gaze drifting up, to meet Neil's terrified eyes. Are you deaf, Mr. Delgado? Or just willfully stupid? Neil's mouth opened, but only a pathetic, breathless croak came out. He looked at Chavez, then at the 3 police cruisers, then at the squad of uniformed officers fanning out to secure the base of the stage. His arms slowly dropped to his side, limp as a wet rag. Vincent Finch was the first to try and salvage the sinking ship. He was a survivor, a man who had clawed his way to the top of Evergreen Academy by knowing exactly whose boots to lick. He took a hurried step forward, his polished shoes scuffing the stage, and forced a sickeningly sweet smile onto his face. Director Chavez, what a profound misunderstanding. Finch practically choked on the words, stepping between me and Neil as if trying to physically block out what had just happened. We had no idea. The boy, Deputy Director Simmons, he looked so young. We thought he was an intruder. You know how security is these days. Jeffrey, we were just protecting the students. Save it. Vincent Chavez cut him off, his voice slicing through the principal's groveling like a scalpel, and address me by my title. We are friends. Finch swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing in his throat. The sweat on his forehead was catching the glare of the afternoon sun. I finally uncrossed my arms and took a step forward. The remaining color drained from Finch's face as I approached. I reached out and calmly plucked the microphone from Neil's numb fingers. A misunderstanding, I repeated, my voice booming across the silent field. I looked down at the sea of students, finding the faces of the kids who had been whispering just minutes ago. Is that what we call grabbing a man by the hair, Principal Finch? Is that what we call threatening to permanently disfigure someone with a marker in front of 2,000 minors? Finch stammered. Deputy Director, please. Emotions were running high. Neil, he's a protective father. You were harassing his daughter. Was I tilted my head. I looked at the lead police officer, Captain Miller, who was standing at the bottom of the stairs. Captain, would you mind bringing the young lady out here? Let's clear up this harassment right now. A few moments later, a female officer escorted Gretchen Delgado out from the side doors of the administration building. The girl looked terrified, her shoulders hunched, her eyes darting like a trapped bird. She practically shrank when she saw her father on the stage. Gretchen, I said, gently lowering the microphone so it wouldn't project. You don't need to be afraid. Just tell everyone the truth. What happened in the cafeteria today? Neil suddenly snapped out of his shock. His patriarchal instincts, toxic and deeply ingrained, flared up. Gretchen, tell them this creep was bothering you. Tell them what you told me. Shut your mouth, Captain Miller barked, stepping up the stairs and putting a heavy hand on Neil's shoulder. One more word to the witness and you're in cuffs for tampering. Gretchen looked at the police, then at me. Her bottom lip trembled. He didn't harass me, she whispered, her voice cracking. Speak up, sweetheart, the female officer encouraged softly. Gretchen took a shaky breath. I was in the cafeteria. I only got the free broth. This man saw me. He didn't say anything weird. He just ordered a hot meal, a plate of beef and rice, and put it down in front of me. He said I looked like I needed a good lunch. That was it. A murmur rippled through the student body. The narrative Neil had spun was unraveling in real time. Then, why were you crying when your dad grabbed him? Finch asked desperately, clinging to his last shred of a defense. You yelled, Dad, it's not what you think. Gretchen wrapped her arms around herself. Tears spilled over her cheeks. Because I knew what my dad would do. He's crazy. He thinks every guy who looks at me is trying to ruin my grades. I was crying because I knew he was going to hurt someone who was just trying to be nice. The murmur in the crowd turned into a wave of disgusted whispers. Students were glaring at Neil now. I looked at the girl. Her uniform hung slightly loose on her frame. Gretchen, why were you only eating the free broth? Your father is a senior teacher at an elite academy. You aren't on financial aid. The question hung in the air. Gretchen looked down at her worn shoes, too terrified to speak. I turned my back on her and faced her father. I'll tell you why, I said into the microphone, letting the cold fury I'd been holding back finally seep into my voice. Because I didn't just come here today to eat the cafeteria food. I came here on an undercover investigation into Evergreen Academy's operations. Finch physically stumbled backward. Investigation? 2 weeks ago, the Bureau received an anonymous tip. I announced to the crowd. A tip stating that Neil Delgado uses starvation as a disciplinary tactic for his Ivy League daughter. If she scores below a 100 on any practice test, she is deprived of her lunch allowance for the week. She scored a 99 on Tuesday's AP Physics mock exam. So, the crown jewel of Evergreen Academy has been living on salt water and chicken bones for 3 days. The courtyard erupted. Gasps angry. Shouts and sheer disbelief echoed off the brick walls of the school. Teachers, standing at the edges of the classes, looked at Neil with undisguised horror. Lies, Neil shrieked, his voice pitching into a hysterical squeal. It's discipline. It builds character. She's #1 in the city. You bureaucrats don't understand what it takes to forge greatness. I understand child abuse, I replied flatly, and I understand assault. I looked at Captain Miller. Captain, the red marks on my wrist, the bruise forming on my jaw where he struck me in the cafeteria, and the attempted assault with a chemical marker you all just witnessed. Gladly, Miller said. He grabbed Neil's arm, twisting it behind his back with practice deficiency, the metallic snick of handcuffs echoing through. The microphone was the sweetest sound I'd heard all day. Neil thrashed. His prior arrogance entirely evaporated, replaced by a pathetic, whining panic. Vincent, do something. I'm your top teacher. I bring in the Ivy League. Numbers. You can't let them do this. Finch backed away from Neil as if the man were radioactive. I know nothing about his parenting methods. He is an independent contractor of this institution. I am appalled, truly appalled. Finch turned back to me, trying to look like a statesman. Deputy Director, thank you for bringing this monster to light. I assure you, Evergreen Academy will cooperate fully with Child Services. Oh, we're not done. Principal Finch, I interrupted, my voice dropping an octave. Finch froze. His eyes darted to Director Chavez, who had pulled a thick manila folder from his briefcase. You see, I continued pacing slowly across the stage. When we started looking into Mr. Delgado, we had to look into the school's records, and we found some fascinating anomalies that explain why I decided to go to the cafeteria today. I pointed toward the sprawling dining hall across the campus. Evergreen Academy receives over $2 million a year in state subsidies to provide high-quality, affordable meals to its students. Yet a basic plate of beef and rice today cost me $18. The free broth tastes like dishwater, and the portion sizes have shrunk by 40%. Since last year, Finch was visibly trembling now. Inflation, he croaked out. Supply chain issues. Embezzlement. I corrected, not breaking eye contact. Director Chavez, what did the forensic accountants find this morning? Chavez opened the folder. He didn't use a microphone, but his voice was so commanding the entire field strained to listen. We found 3 offshore accounts tied to a shell corporation registered in the Cayman Islands. The corporation is named Evergreen Educational Consultants. The sole signatory on those accounts is Vincent Finch. Over the last 3 years, approximately $4.2 million meant for student lunches, textbook subsidies, and athletic gear has been siphoned directly into those accounts. A dead silence fell over the teachers and students. The magnitude of the theft was staggering, but that's not the best part, I said, a grim smile playing on my lips. Tell them about the Ivy League slots, Director. Chavez flipped a page. We also uncovered a ledger in Principal Finch's private server. It outlines a systematic bribery ring. Mr. Finch and Mr. Delgado have been manipulating the internal GPA systems. They take brilliant, overworked students like Gretchen, use their legitimate test scores to boost the school's overall prestige, and then sell the principal's Ivy League recommendation slots to the highest bidding wealthy parents whose children have mediocre grades but deep pockets. The student body exploded. This wasn't just a murmur anymore. It was a riot. Kids who had studied until their eyes bled, kids who had cried themselves to sleep over their class rankings realized the game had been rigged from the start. Shouts of anger, betrayal, and pure vitriol were hurled toward the stage. Finch's knees gave out. He collapsed onto the wooden planks of the stage, his perfectly tailored suit wrinkling around him. He looked like a deflated balloon. You hacked my server without a warrant? We had a warrant, Vincent Chavez said coldly. Signed by a federal judge at 6 o'clock this morning. Colin going undercover today was just to ensure you and Delgado didn't leave the premises while we finalized the raid. I walked over to Finch, looking down at the man who had mere minutes ago threatened to throw me In juvenile detention, you asked me if I had the guts to dial my parents, I said. Quietly, though the mic picked it up. I dialed the director of the bureau. You asked me who I thought I was fooling. I wasn't fooling anyone, Finch. I was just giving you enough rope to hang yourself. You're a demon, Finch whispered, staring up at me with hollow, terrified eyes. You have a baby face, but you're a monster. No, I replied, clicking the microphone off and tossing it onto his chest. I'm just the guy who does the homework. I turned to Captain Miller. Take them both. Seize Finch's computers, his phone, and lock down the administrative wing. No one goes in or out of his office until the forensics team tears it apart. Yes, sir. Officers swarmed the stage. Finch was hauled to his feet, too in shock to even resist as the cuffs clicked around his wrists. Neil Delgado was still sobbing, crying out for his daughter, but Gretchen had turned her back on him. She was surrounded by a few of her classmates, girls who had rushed forward to hold her, shielding her from the sight of her father being dragged away like trash. Director Chavez walked up to me and clapped a heavy hand on my shoulder. Good work, Colin. You took a hit to the face, though. I rubbed my jaw. It throbbed, but I barely felt it. Occupational hazard, sir. Plus, it upgraded his charge from simple battery to assaulting a government official. Worth the bruise. Chavez chuckled. A dry, humorless sound. Go get some ice on it. I'll handle the press and the parents. It's going to be a bloodbath. Let it bleed, I said, looking out over the stunned, whispering crowds of students. This place needs to be purged before it can actually educate anyone. Epilogue. 6 months later, the crisp autumn air blew through the gates of a newly renamed City Magnet High School, formerly Evergreen Academy. The oppressive, elitist atmosphere that once choked the campus had vanished, replaced by the loud, chaotic, and wonderfully normal sounds of teenagers just being teenagers. I stood by the gates, wearing a simple windbreaker, holding a cup of decent coffee. No badge today, just a follow-up visit. The fallout from that day had made national news. Vincent Finch was currently serving a 15-year sentence in federal prison for embezzlement, wire fraud, and extortion. Neil Delgado had lost his teaching license permanently, served time for assault, and was hit with a restraining order that kept him 500 yards away from his daughter. The school board had been gutted and replaced. The cafeteria was now run by a local culinary union, and a hot meal cost $3. As the lunch bell rang, a flood of students poured out of the main building, heading toward the dining hall and the athletic fields. Among them, I spotted a familiar face. Gretchen Delgado. She looked different. She had gained a healthy amount of weight, her posture was straight, and the dark, terrified circles under her eyes were completely gone. She was laughing, a real, bright sound, as she walked with a group of friends. She caught sight of me standing near the gates. She stopped, said something to her friends, and jogged over. Mr. Simmons? She asked, a tentative but genuine smile on her face. It's just Colin outside the office. I smiled back. How are you doing, Gretchen? I'm good, she said. Really good. I'm living with my aunt now. She doesn't care if I get an A or a B, just wants me to be happy. And the college applications? She shrugged, a gesture of careless freedom. That would have given her father an aneurysm. I dropped out of the Ivy League track. I'm applying to the state university. They have an amazing marine biology program, and it's near the beach. I think I'm done with pressure for a lifetime. I think that's the smartest thing anyone at this school has ever said. I told her. She looked at me for a long moment, the gratitude in her eyes speaking volumes that words couldn't reach. Thank you for that day, for the lunch. Anytime I said, now go eat. I hear the cafeteria serves actual food these days. She laughed and ran back to her friends. I watched them go, taking a sip of my coffee. The city was full of corruption, full of people who used their power to crush those beneath them. Tomorrow there would be another file on my desk, another school, another bully in suit. But today was a good day. I threw my empty coffee cup in the trash, shoved my hands in my pockets, and walked away from the school, whistling a quiet tune into the autumn wind.